Not only is Telesforo Trinidad the only Filipino American in the US Navy to have received the Medal of Honor, he is also having a Navy battleship named after him. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a US Navy battleship that is currently being built that will be named after a Filipino. Yay! Good times. It's really, really, really exciting. He's kind of a big deal, and he is an example of just how badass Filipinos can be, even when their lives are in danger. Mabuhay and welcome back to the channel. My name is Tez Milan. I am a Filipino American creative on a mission to do a deep dive into my lost Philippine heritage to learn as much as I possibly can and to share that with you. In honor of Memorial Day here in the US, I want to tell you about a Filipino who was in the US Navy in the early 1900s by the name of Telesforo Trinidad. And the reason why I want to tell you about him is because he is the only Filipino American in the US Navy to have received the Medal of Honor. Now, the reason why the Medal of Honor is such a big deal is because it is usually given to people in the military who display tremendous acts of valor and courage, usually in the face of like having their lives on the line. So when I first learned about this man, I was like, well, who is this person and why are they naming the ship after him and why is he a big deal? Telesforo Trinidad was born in 1890 in the Philippines, and in 1910, he joined the U.S. Navy. Now, the reason why a Filipino in the Philippines joined the US Navy is because in 1901, President McKinley signed an executive order that allowed 500 Filipinos in the Philippines to join the US Navy as a part of the insular forces. Basically, that means that the US had a military presence in the Philippines for various reasons in history that we know about and sometimes don't know about because it's not really taught to us in history here in the US. But nonetheless, there was a military presence in the Philippines. And in order to support those troops, they decided to bring on Filipinos to support them by becoming stewards. What's interesting about Telesforo Trinidad is that he actually became a fireman in the US Navy. And during his time in the US Navy, he was on a ship called the USS San Diego. In 1915, this particular ship was off the coast of, I think it was Baja, California, in Mexican waters. After doing some training and some testing of the ship, I think there was like 4 hours of intensive testing of the speed and the strength of the ship. The ship unfortunately caught fire because the boiler room inside the ship exploded. Now, because Telesforo Trinidad was a fireman second class in that ship, he happened to be near that boiler room at the time that it exploded. When it first exploded, he was blown out of, I think it was called like Fire Room 1. Instead of just like running and trying to, run for safety and take care of himself, he saw that there was a sailor in one of those fire rooms who was badly injured but still alive. So after he was blown out of that first room, he ran back into fire room number 2 to save a sailor that he saw that was still alive but injured. And so he grabbed that sailor, pulled him out, and saw that there was another sailor who was also injured but still alive. As he was pulling that first sailor out, another fire room exploded. And at that point, he was severely injured on the face. He had burns, but he saved that first sailor and then ran back to go save a second sailor. Now, I don't know if that seems impressive to you or not. It's really impressive to me. And for this very reason, for running back into a blazing fire, not once, but twice, Telesforo Trinidad was given the Medal of Honor. Fast forward over 100 years later, in 2021, a commissioning committee started to campaign for the naming of a battleship after Telesforo Trinidad. And after getting petition signatures and telling people all about Telesforo Trinidad and his story, going on the news, going to all of the politicians who were in charge of helping to name these ships. In 2022, it was approved and announced by U.S. Navy Secretary Carlos del Toro that the 89th Arleigh-Burke class guided missile destroyer was going to be named after Telesforo Trinidad. After the ship was announced, it was set in 2024, the ship would start to be built, and in 2026, the ship would be christened, and 2028 is when the ship will be commissioned, meaning that it will set sail onto the waters. Now, what's been very cool about this whole experience, learning about Telesforo Trinidad and the naming of this Navy battleship after him, is that in order to learn the story, I got the opportunity to interview amazing veterans about their participation in making sure that this ship gets named. I will be sharing those interviews with you for Veterans Day, which is this November, and you'll get to meet all of those people and learn all about the campaign that is going forth in order to ensure that this ship is not only commissioned properly, but also celebrated to the fullest. Before I let you go, I do want to let you know that there are 3 other Filipinos who earned the Medal of Honor, not in the U.S. Navy, but in the U.S. Army. Rudolph Bianco Davila, who in World War II was in Italy and earned his Medal of Honor. Jose Calugas, who was in the Philippines and actually participated in the Bataan Death March and survived that, as well as Jose Balitón Nisperos. Now, the interesting thing about Jose Nisperos is that he earned his Medal of Honor in the early 1900s for fighting outlaws. At that time, outlaws in the Philippines were revolutionaries who were trying to gain independence for the Philippines from the US. So more than likely, this particular soldier was part of the US Army, but he was Filipino and he was probably fighting his fellow Filipinos. That's a little bit of complicated history right there, but it did happen. Something that we can still be proud of, the fact that there are Filipinos that have earned this high distinction for their valor and courage in the face of adversity in defending the US. And it's an interesting part of our history and our entanglement with the US because we definitely are very, very close to each other in many respects, and the US military is one of those. That also has a lot of history intertwined in it. Be on the lookout for more information about the naming of the battleship Telesforo Trinidad. I'm sure it will hit the news, especially as we get closer to the christening and the commissioning of this ship. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for joining me on this wonderful Memorial Day holiday. Hope you had a safe and fun time. And if you like this episode, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, let people know about it if they want to learn a bit of Philippine history and how it pertains to US history. Let them know, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.